welcome back to Leia's Library. Find yourself a cozy corner, get yourself a cozy drink, and let's get started. Today, we will be looking at books that I really thought I would enjoy and really wanted to enjoy, but I just didn't. And I'm kind of sad about it. Most of these books are books that I don't really like. So like 2 stars or less. I think I gave most of them 2 stars, but some of them are ones that I really didn't like, but I don't think they're objectively bad and other people might enjoy them. So I will say which one is which. So yeah, let's get into it. So first up is an honorable mention. I don't think it fully qualifies for this list, but it partially does. So it's an honorable mention. And it's When the Moon Was Ours by Anna Marie MacLemore. And it's about 2 teenagers, Miel and Samir, who are as strange as they are inseparable. Miel has roses that grow out of her wrist, and Samir, he prefers Sam, is known for the moons that he paints and hangs up around the town. And he's also well known for how little everybody knows about him and his mom before they moved to this town. But as odd as everyone thinks they are, even they stay away from the Bonner sisters. They're 4 beautiful sisters who are rumored to be witches, but now the Bonner sisters want the roses that grow out of Miel's wrists because they're convinced that their scent will make anyone fall in love with them, and will kind of restore their failing powers. And they're willing to use every secret that Miel has fought to protect to make sure that she gives them up. So the reason this book is an honorable mention is because I didn't dislike it. I still enjoyed it. I really thought I was going to adore it, and I didn't. It's one of the ones on this list that I do still recommend to people, and I mostly recommend it because the writing is just beautiful. Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. It's one of those books, again, that I say that's just like, it paints such beautiful imageries with words. It is written like a painting. Every sentence a painting. It's beautiful. So that's one, like, a big reason. The other reason is that the 2 main characters, Miel and Samir, are quite interesting. I really like them as characters, and they work really well together. And when the story is focused on them and their relationship, it's very good. And I really liked all of those aspects of it. But my main problem is that it's very repetitive. There are 2 or 3, probably more than that even. There are a couple scenes that repeat very often with like very slight differences. It's like Miel goes to see the Bonner sisters and it doesn't go her way, and Miel goes back to see the Bonner sisters and it doesn't go her way, and Miel goes back to and you see what I mean? It's a lot of the same sorts of things happening over and over again. And even the writing, which, like I said, is beautiful, but sometimes it draws the scenes on longer than they need to be, in my opinion. So I found myself just kind of wishing they'd hurry things up a little bit. I just think everything would have been so much better if it had been edited down just a little bit. Like if each scene had been trimmed at the edge by a little bit, or like a snip cut out of the middle, and it would have been so much better, and it wouldn't be on this list. But if you are looking for a very beautifully written, very atmospheric trans love story with magical realism elements, then I would recommend it, and I don't think it's bad by any means. I just think it could have been better. Okay, so the first real entry on the list is The Once and Future Witches by Alix Harrow, which is an adult fantasy fiction historical retelling? Historical fiction? Might also be historical fiction. It is set in an 1893 that is similar to ours, but with some noticeable differences. Mainly that witchcraft exists. It follows these 3 sisters, James Juniper, Agnes Amaranth, and Beatrice Belladonna, as they join the suffragist movement in New Salem together, despite having sort of drifted apart as they got older. But it's not just women's rights that they're fighting for, they're also fighting for the return of magic and of witches. So I love the premise of this book. Like, the idea of tying the suffragist movement to witchcraft I love that. I think that's so cool. And I still enjoyed parts of this book, but it just didn't meet my expectations, unfortunately. So I'll start with the good things. Prose, gorgeous, beautifully written. It's written like a fairy tale, or perhaps like a witch tale in this case. And it really heightens the whole atmosphere. And all the characters are really interesting. They're all very distinct from each other, and they're all very distinct from each other, and they follow the archetype of the maiden mother crone. And also, for a book set in the 1890s, it is actually quite diverse, which was a pleasant surprise. The Black community of New Salem is very heavily featured and involved in the plot. And one of the sisters is a gay woman, as is one of the prominent Black characters. So we love that on this channel. Now to get into what I didn't like so much. Kind of similar to When the Moon Was Ours, is the writing is beautiful, but it sometimes drags things on too long, like a lot longer than it needed to be. So there are sections of this book that just drag, nothing is happening, and then it's interrupted by these like short, hectic, frenetic bursts of activity. It's just kind of like atmosphere, plot, 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 atmosphere, plot, 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 atmosphere. And it's very kind of like whiplash inducing, like there's a lot of very sudden plot happening. But I must say, the main thing that didn't do it for me was actually probably not this book's fault. It was definitely a marketing issue. Because something that bothered me from the very beginning of the book is that the book's tagline is, "There's no such thing as witches, but there will be." Except that's just not true. The three sisters are literal witches, which we find out on page 1. And witchcraft is very much well established in this world. Everyone knows that it exists. The thing is, it's that it's not as strong as it used to be. So there used to be more like real prominent witches, but magic has kind of died out a little bit. So now it's just used for little like household spells to like clean the counter or sew a button or stuff like that. Which really threw me off because I thought this was in our world. I thought this was taking place in our world, i.e. a world where magic doesn't exist, or so it would appear. And I had no idea it was set in like an alternate reality of our world. So the marketing really failed it in that regard, because had I known exactly what I was going into, I might have enjoyed it more, but it just wasn't the story that I thought it was going to be, so I was inevitably disappointed. But I did check Goodreads before I wrote the script for this, and they've actually changed the description of the book to make it very clear that it is like an alternate reality and that witchcraft is very well established. It's just has diminished since the yonder years, I guess. So, I don't know, maybe I wasn't the only one to make that complaint, because this is one of the few books that I actually did review on Goodreads. I always forget to leave reviews of books on Goodreads, but I have like 8 up there, and this is one of them. So yeah, I enjoyed parts of it, but on the whole, I don't think I'd ever be interested in going back to it, and I don't really recommend this one very much. Although if it does sound very interesting to you, then don't let me stop you. Please pick it up. Do I even know what I'm talking about? Probably not. Enjoy what you enjoy. It's fine. Live your life. Next up is Cinderella is Dead by Kalynn Barron? Kalynn? I'm so sorry. I do not know how to pronounce this name. I think it's Kalynn? I'm gonna go with Kalynn. Anyway, this is a YA LGBTQ plus fairy tale retelling. It takes place 200 years after Cinderella found her prince, And in this world, teen girls are now forced to attend the annual ball, where all the men of the kingdom select wives based on the girls' finery, or the girls' display of finery. And if they're not selected, these girls are never heard from again. On the night of the ball, 16-year-old Sophia decides to just run away and escape all this, and she ends up hiding in Cinderella's mausoleum, where she meets Constance, who is the last known descendant of Cinderella and her stepsisters. Together, they learn that a lot of Cinderella's true story has been hidden from them, and they vow to take down the king and everything he stands for. This one especially hurt because it had so much going for it. So much stuff that I should have loved. Fairy tale retelling? Yep. Queer love story? Yep. Destroying the patriarchy? Yep. And yet, it just fell flat. This, I believe, is the author's first book, and I hate to say this because it sounds so mean, but it does show that it's her first novel. It feels more like a first draft than a finished novel. Very little is built up. Things are just sort of said, and we're supposed to take them as fact. There's a lot of tell don't show, which is not ideal. We're told that this kingdom is merciless and ruthless and brutal and incredibly dangerous, especially for women, mostly for women. But the opening scene is two teenage girls sneaking around what we're told are very, well-trained, brutal guards. And they're doing it very easily. And if I recall correctly, this is not the first time they've done this. And there's not even a hint of them almost getting caught. It's very easy for them. So it kind of undermines the danger aspect a little bit. Until the danger aspect is just, suddenly shoved in our faces. So to prepare for the ball, the families of these girls spend a fortune on dress and jewelry and makeup and styling, everything. Because this is essentially their daughter's only chance at life, is they have to find a husband at this ball. So, families spend everything just making sure that their daughter looks good enough to attract somebody's eye. But one of Sophia's friends, her family is quite poor. They don't have a whole lot of money. They don't have enough to really spend on the finery. So instead, they, I can't remember exactly the detail. I think they were just hoping and praying that a fairy godmother would show up, which is kind of like a folk tale in here. I mean, similar to the Cinderella story. But one doesn't show up for her. So she ends up going to the ball looking rather plain. She's not dressed nearly as... She's 1/10 as fancy as all the rest of the girls. And the moment the king sees her, he throws a tantrum and has her dragged out. He gets almost comically enraged. Just the way he's like, you thought you looked fit to come to this ball in front of all these people? It's just I don't know, it wasn't that it was funny, but it was just the suddenness of it, and the way his dialogue was written made him sound like a petulant child. So it was almost slightly comical, and anyway, he has her dragged out, and yet, not long after this, Sophia, who is rightfully disgusted by all these goings-ons, she goes to the bathroom and just scrubs off all of her makeup that her family spent their whole life savings on, essentially. She scrubs it all off, and I'm pretty sure it says she goes back out into the ball with her face still wet and makeup still trailing down it, and that's it. She suffers no consequences for it. She still has people looking at her nicely, and the fact that she even did it kind of negates the severity of this kingdom. if that other girl got thrown out for her dress being not fancy, wouldn't Sophia be thrown out for not wearing makeup and for having, makeup and water trailing down her face? No, it that bothered me. It's a lot of things like that, and a lot of being told things that we have no evidence for, and a lot of convenient information just kind of showing up right where we needed it. And the ending was sped through so quickly that I thought I maybe missed something. And it's also wrapped up super conveniently. Like the end is they overthrow the king, and then suddenly Sophia is queen. And yeah, see, it's strange. We got like a couple pages of the end fight, and then it was just over. So it was very fast. And I really do appreciate everything that this book was trying to do. I really do love that it was a queer retelling of a fairy tale, and that it also had a Black main character. Sophia is Black. I do really appreciate those and like everything that they mean. I just think it should have been worked on a little bit more before it got published, and then it would have been excellent. So next up is The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. This is an adult LGBTQ plus fantasy, and I know a lot of people who really like this book. I am not one of them. I'm sorry. Okay, but what is it about? So it follows two women, Malini, who is a princess imprisoned by her brother in an ancient temple that was said to once house these powerful, deathless waters, and Priya, who is Malini's maidservant, who is content to be a servant so long as it hides her true identity and her past with the temple. As the princess seeks revenge on her treacherous brother, Priya is desperately searching for her lost family, and their destinies become intertwined, and together they will change the fate of the whole empire. So this world is based on the history and epics of India, which is why I picked it up. I've always been a fantasy lover, but the past couple of years I've been really trying to broaden my fantasy. I've been specifically looking for fantasy that's not set, or that's not inspired by or based on white European folklore and white European histories and ideologies, which led me to find this book, since it's a fantasy inspired by India. And I did think the world building and the magic in this world were incredibly interesting. I really enjoyed the world building. I thought the magic was super cool. My problem was unfortunately with the characters. And it's strange because I really should like them. They're both sort of these morally gray characters fighting to better their lives and also their world. And normally, I eat that up. I love morally gray female characters. See also. And individually, I think both Malini and Priya are really solid. I really like both of them individually. I just do not buy them at all as a couple. I'm sorry. To me, they have no chemistry, no reason to want to be together. Maybe I missed something, but the only real explanation I remember getting about Priya's attraction to Malini is that Malini is stunning. And that's just not enough for me. And I don't know if we get all that much more from Malini. We're told over and over that Priya is unlovely. They use that word a lot. Unlovely is Priya. And, part of this is also probably memory. I'm sure there was something mentioned, but I really can't remember how they built up the relationship other than they were just forced to be in close proximity to each other, and they both happened to be gay. Okay, that's not good enough for me. I'm sorry. And, again, maybe I missed something, but I was just not invested in their relationship, which was a bit of a problem because the relationship is a sizable portion of this book. It's definitely not the main focus. There is a lot of other things going on plot-wise, but it is a focus, and if that doesn't work, it does kind of derail everything else. Although the world is so cool, so this is the only one on the list that I would actually consider going back and rereading. Maybe sometime in the future. Maybe. The last one on the list is super painful for me personally. It's Alice by Heart by Stephen Sater. This is a YA historical fiction / retelling. It is set during the height of the London Blitz, and our main character, Alice Spencer, seeks shelter in an underground tube station with her childhood best friend, Alfred, who is suffering from tuberculosis, and the doctors say he's not likely to make it through the night. Desperate to keep holding on to him, Alice does the one thing she thinks might help, him heal. She reads aloud their favorite story, the story that drew them together and the story that they bonded over, Alice in Wonderland. As Alice tells the story, the lines between reality and story sort of blur, and Alice has to decide whether she wants to remain a child and stay in the story, or embrace the pain of reality and grow up. So this is based on the off-Broadway musical by the same name, Alice by Heart. It even has the same writer. Stephen Sater wrote the lyrics for all the songs, and he co-wrote the book of the musical with somebody else. And when I tell you that Alice by Heart is my favorite musical, I mean that I watched it once and proceeded to make my whole life revolve around it. I mean that it was bad. I mean that I was obsessed, and still am. I mean that I convinced several people, not even musical theater people, to watch it and got them hooked on the music. I mean that at the beginning of quarantine, or close to the beginning of quarantine, I did this thing on my Instagram where I had these mini concerts called Alice by Heart, but it's just me and not as good, where I would just I went song by song and I sang them all. And there was set design and costumes and makeup, and I sang all the different parts, just me, to varying degrees of quality, but I tried. So when I found out about the book, of course I instantly bought it. And, well, I am significantly less obsessed with it, to put it lightly. It's very overwritten to the point of being pretentious sometimes. And this was Stephen Sater's first novel, but he has written several musicals before. So he's very established. This is not going to hurt his career. I'm a nobody in a sea of YouTubers, so he's not even going to hear this. But so I'm very sorry, Mr. Sater. I loved your musical, but this is not how you write a book. I'm very sorry. There's so many passages in here that have so much flowery fluff that I didn't even know what the hell was going on. And I'd seen the show. And when you take the songs out of Alice by Heart, you realize nothing really happens. The whole show is Alice coming to terms with Alfred's inevitable upcoming death and coming to terms with having to grow up. And a lot of that is done through song. So when you take out the songs, you're just left in Alice's head with a lot of thoughts. Just page after page after page after page of thoughts. And so the only people I would really recommend this to are people who are putting up the musical, if you manage to get the rights for it, because apparently nobody can right now. But if you're putting up the musical, or if you're going to be in the musical, I would recommend picking this up because there are quite a few character things and character backstories and character traits that aren't delved into as deeply in the musical, if at all. But if you're also a fan of the musical, you're probably better off just rewatching the musical again. But hey, again, don't let me stop you if you really want to pick it up. It is pretty. It's got pictures in it. They're not always like nice pictures, but they're pictures. Like, here's some children wearing gas masks. Fun. But if you've never heard of the musical before until now, you're probably not going to get very much from this. But oh my god, please watch the musical. It's really good. I think it's fantastic. You want to go over an in-depth character analysis on any of the characters? Hit me up. I'm so ready. Oh, why am I like this? And that is it for today. Thank you so much for coming along this meandering little journey with me. If you've read any of the books, I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. If you've read any of these and felt similarly or felt completely differently, would love to hear about it. And if you'd like to find me elsewhere, you can find me at moonlightcatcreations.com. No, you can't find me at Moonlight. What am I saying? You can find... My brain went on autopilot. I'm so sorry. If you want to find me elsewhere, you can find me at Instagram at Leia Like the Princess, or you can find my little embroidery and art store there at Moonlight Cat Creations, or you can go directly to the website, moonlightcatcreations.com. There we go. Until next time, stay cozy.